What's up, everybody? A midday live stream here, and this is why we always say to subscribe and hit that reminder bell because we truly don't know from one day to the next when we're going to have time to do a video and come hang out with you guys for a while. I know most people are probably going to be on the rewatch crew because there was not a lot of notice given for this video, and the jurors have a question in this case. We're going to talk about that question, talk about what they're doing and why they're doing it as we get through the closing arguments here, because I think there's a pretty good spot in the closings that may let us know why the jurors are requesting to see the Ring doorbell camera videos, the body cam footage, all of that stuff. So it's going to be important to discuss that jury question that's going on right now. They're replaying the video that if you watch the trial, you already saw the video. Other people are streaming the Parkland shooter trial for the resource officer. Scott Peterson has started. Those are the opening statements that are happening right now. So a lot of stuff is happening right now. But I wanted to talk about these closing arguments because we've looked into this case now enough. I've watched the closing arguments. I do have some thoughts, and you guys had a lot of questions on Twitter and Instagram at Tragos Law. If you want to get in the conversation there. So we're going to talk about closing arguments today. We're on verdict watch. We'll talk about the verdict whenever it comes down. Tomorrow, I want to talk about the Scott Peterson opening statements that are happening today. So if you're watching that trial, we will talk about that as well. And then on Friday, a very special guest has agreed to come on. It is going to be a bit of a, I don't know what I'm saying that Siri thinks I'm talking to it. But very special guest, one of the lawyers on Johnny Depp's team. It's not Ben Chu, not Camille Vasquez. He reached out to me, talk about the case a little bit, said they watched some of our stuff, which I thought was really cool. And so I wanted him to come on. And I've been talking to him, and I figured the year anniversary is a good time. He has cleared some time on Friday. So Friday afternoon, be ready to hear me get to talk to one of the lawyers that represented Johnny Depp about the case, about how social media played in the case, what it was like working with Amber Heard's lawyers, a lot of stuff I haven't seen in all the other interviews. I'm going to try not to hit the same topics that have been hit in all the other interviews. We know it was a great team. We know all this stuff. But I want to talk, more about what we've been talking about, more about what, the questions that we had throughout the process. So I think that would be kind of cool. So we'll talk to him on Friday. So more on that later. And you can go through the whole team and try to guess who that is if you want to, but you will meet him on Friday. And I'm excited. He's a Brown Rudnick partner as well. So he's partners with Ben Chu and Camille Vasquez. So let's talk about Travis Rudolph. Let's talk about these closing arguments. Hit the like button if you haven't already, because if you like it, it helps the rewatch crew. It'll pop up in their For You page or whatever it is on YouTube. Okay, so it started out with the state. And before I watched it, a lot of you said, oh, it was overly dramatic. She went kind of wild on it. She was too sarcastic, a lot of eye rolling type of stuff. And while there was some of that, there was also some stuff that I did like as well from the state's closing. She started out by saying this is not about domestic violence. It is about murder and self-defense. And I already dropped it. I dropped the M bomb. I don't know if we'll see if we get hit for it. M begins where self-defense ends is what she said. People showed out. She also said, yes, people showed up at his house at midnight, but that's not illegal. And I completely disagree with her that that's not illegal. Where 4 people show up to your house after being texted to come shoot somebody up or F somebody up, and they bring weapons. It's confirmed at least one of them have a gun. Travis Rudolph said 2 of them did. But even the 4, I guess we'll call them victims in this case, they admitted that at least one of them did have a gun. So showing up to fight somebody with the intent to fight somebody with a gun is in fact illegal. Prosecutors should know that. So she says it's not illegal. And I think that's a bad start for the prosecutor on a case like this, in my opinion. But I think something that some people thought potentially was a little overly dramatic, I kind of liked how she talked about where each one of the 39 shots went into the car. This one into this door frame, this one into his body, this one into the chair, this one in there. She was loud with it, and I think that was effective. And I think her saying exactly where each of those shots went also gave the effect that that is a lot of times to pull a trigger. And if it really is just self-defense to neutralize a threat, is that appropriate? So I thought that was pretty effective by her. I'm going to call it like I see it. You guys know the good, the bad, the ugly. But then right after that, which I thought was effective, I thought it was ineffective again to say what they did was not illegal and then also try to make us feel bad for or like the victims in this case. They're just not likable victims. And I felt like she was trying to get too much sympathy for them and too much, good vibes toward them when really, for all intents and purposes, that night they were doing something they should not have been doing. But let me bring it up here and we're going to show the first clip that I want to talk through from the prosecutor's closing.
Also about what a reasonable, objective person thought was reasonable and necessary under the circumstances.
So she's talking right now about self-defense and about specifically the initial aggressor, which is a big part of this case that we talked about. A big argument by the state is that regardless of who the initial aggressor was, Rudolph and his brother continued the fight, sought the fight, ran after them, chased after them when they were fleeing, and that's when he pulled the trigger, and that's why this is a crime and not self-defense.
Initial aggressor. Why is this important? Well, if a person in the state of Florida starts a fight, starts an issue with someone, and then that person simply reacts to it, that potentially could be self-defense. However, if the initial aggressor, the person...
So she admits the initial aggressor starts a fight and somebody reacts, that can be self-defense. That's exactly what Travis Rudolph and his team are arguing. But here's what she says the state's arguing.
That potentially could be self-defense. However, if the initial aggressor, the person who started it all, clearly shows an intent to remove themselves from the violence, but the person who the force was used against first decides they're not done and would like to continue the violence, that's where we have the problem.
She is correct. If they clearly flee and do not want to continue the fight, you cannot seek after them, run after them, and finish the deal, basically. But the big question I have for all of you, because this is kind of the crux of the case. So the big question I have for all of you is, what does it mean to clearly end a fight? Is it not reasonable for Travis Rudolph, and I would have argued this, the defense didn't really hit on this, I would have made this argument. Is it not reasonable for him to believe they ran back to the car to get the weapons? Is it not reasonable for him to believe they ran back to the car to go get more people to come back to his house and, still try to get him? Is it not reasonable that the threat had not ended? And especially when he saw guns drawn, which they have to say, the state has to say that's a lie. He didn't see it, and the defense is arguing he did. That's a big part of this as well. But just because they went to their car doesn't mean the fight's over, in my opinion, especially if he still saw them beating his brother up.
Is this aggression? Is it? That will be the question before you. Seem to be speaking calmly. Can I speak to Travis? Gotta holler at him. And we know, perhaps at the beginning, the notion that someone could possibly be wanting to speak to someone in the middle of the night sounded ridiculous. But then we heard more about the story. These people aren't strangers. They call each other little bro and big bro. They know each other. They go to family events together. They are not strangers.
Okay, so we're going to stop that clip here just to talk a little bit about how, again, she is trying to minimize showing up at midnight to talk to somebody. Sure, that's fine. And little bro and big bro, they were friends. It's like, yeah, but exes, when you're, cheating on them or fighting with them or whatever, and that's her brother and his friends, and you get the context of the text messages, this was very, very clearly not just a calm conversation. So I don't like to be, I'm not going to say lied to. I don't like to be patronized, and I'm sure a jury doesn't either. Like, come on, Miss Prosecutor and Mr. Prosecutor, because he did it as well in the rebuttal. Please do not tell me that this was nothing when I know that it was not nothing. I just don't like that. And you lose credibility with your other arguments when you make statements like that. One good argument I thought she made was if Tyler had a gun, or if the other person in the car had the gun. I can't remember if they said it was Sebastian, who is the victim that is deceased in the case, or somebody else. If they did have a gun and Travis Rudolph started shooting, why did they never fire back? I think that is actually a really, really good argument by the state. And that's something I would like to discuss with my fellow jurors if I was on this jury. If they really did have guns, if the guns were drawn out toward Travis and his brother, right? If the guns were drawn, why did they never pull the trigger in response? That's interesting to me. Why did they never respond? I see some people commenting on my shirt. Thank you very much. My wife got it for me. And my buddy today who saw me at this conference was like, "Oh yeah, I see you up there in your 70s blouse." I love a good use of the word blouse. And he was right. I would say that is kind of a good description. Rudolph's mom begging him not to get the gun. I think that's a good point for the state that she made. How did Daryl get down the street chasing the victims? Good use of video to talk about when the fight stops and when he runs out with the weapon, when Travis runs out with the AR. Someone's yelling he's going in the house because they know what he's going in the house for, and that's why they leave and flee. Also a really good argument. She made some really good points in this closing, which is why the few points she made that just I felt like were disingenuous, I felt like hurt the rest of the credibility. But she does also explain pursuit, which I thought was important and she had to do. And let's listen to her explanation of that together.
Tyler books it and starts running back to the car. End up down on Redwood. Well, he says he turns his attention to Daryl after Tyler runs to the car. So basically after the ring video we just watched, you got this. Tyler books it and starts running back to the car. Mr. Rudolph's own testimony is that Tyler keeps running. He even passes where Daryl is and runs to the car. Then Travis Rudolph says he sees his brother. And before he can even reach him, ladies and gentlemen, this is his own testimony, 40 to 50 feet before he even reaches Daryl, he realizes that all the men that were fighting with Daryl run off back to the car. He hasn't even gotten to wherever Daryl has ended up. So how does he get all the way to being in front of the car that he sees firearms? It's because he followed them. He pursued them. In the state of Florida, you are allowed to stand your ground. In the state of Florida, you do not have a duty to retreat if somebody is coming at you in a place you have a right to be. But you do not, ladies and gentlemen, get to pursue people and then claim self-defense.
You do not get to pursue people and claim self-defense. But if the people are still posing a threat, you are allowed to neutralize that threat even if it is not at your front door. So I think that is an important distinction to make. But she's right in her explanation.
Let's take a look at this video. It is not the clearest. It really isn't. But it is the best window we have into what actually happened and how it happened. You start seeing the little shadows. I'm not telling you can tell who every single person is. But if you pay long enough attention, you can see the four figures make it back to the car and the rear lights come on and start moving before that flash comes on. The car actually backs up, not drives forward.
I don't know why that's so compelling, and maybe you guys can help me out, but just because they start backing up first, why does that mean they're not a threat anymore? Especially if he says he sees them pulling guns, which they just have to disregard as the state.
Trying to leave. They have signaled they do not wish to continue any violence. And Mr. Rudolph cannot take that for an answer. He shoots 39 times, 39 into this vehicle as it moves and drives away. That is not self-defense. By the time the defendant starts shooting, the Cadillac has already moving away. It has reversed, and then Porky Sean, under these conditions, trying to make that three-point turn to get away.
So again, now they're saying they were trying to get away, which is fine. But in the context, I think there's at least an argument that it would be reasonable for Travis Rudolph not to think that they were, quote unquote, trying to get away. And her only real response and argument to Travis Rudolph saying he saw two firearms is my foot. Tinted windows, no way you could see them. Again, not the best argument, in my opinion. Oh, and here's her explanation of why, it was a good argument of why they didn't shoot back. I want to watch that together as well.
I mean, a very important fact that I think goes amiss in the conversation about do you have to wait for someone to shoot you to shoot back? No, you don't have to wait. But if somebody else has a gun out, ready to go, they're going to fire back after that 39 shots being fired at them. It just makes it.
So she's saying you don't have to wait for somebody to shoot back because that's one of the things defense argued. That's correct. But she's saying, but they would have shot back. Don't you think if they had guns drawn? And now she makes the argument.
Defies logic. Else has a gun out, ready to go, they're going to fire back after that 39 shots being fired at them. It defies logic, honestly. Sebastian's hands. Was he holding a firearm? Bulges in the pockets. Let's talk about it. So the first photo you saw had Sebastian's hand looking like this. Defense experts said firearm likely in Sebastian's hand. Could be nothing. Could be another item. Then Dr. Osborne from the medical examiner's office testified that Sebastian had a spinal injury. So that's going to have an impact on how his body rests. Then Sebastian not in full rigor mortis. So if an item was in fact taken from his hand, according to Dr. Osborne, it would just lay in whatever natural state it was in. It wouldn't keep its form because he's not in full rigor mortis, such that you can get the gun out and it just remains there. The hand consistent with holding nothing at all. But let's look at that. Isn't it weird how perspective changes things? You want to see a firearm in somebody's hand when there's no firearm there? You can, depending on the angle of the photo. But this is Sebastian's hand.
So to me, she made a big mistake there to say, if you want to see a firearm in someone's hand based on the certain angle, then you can, but not in this photo. And also her making the statements that there was no gun there, regardless of what he saw. Somebody testified that it could have been a gun. It could have not been a gun. It could have been nothing at all. And I just lost the question. So somebody had a question. What if they brought the guns just as threats, but they weren't loaded? Well, that's a good question. And she kind of makes some arguments like that. Not specifically, but I figured it was a good time to talk about the fact that the guns absolutely do not have to be loaded in order for them to threaten someone's life or serious bodily injury. First off, the other person doesn't know whether or not they're loaded, right? And there have been other cases where people have had drills or toy guns or other objects that could at least somewhat look like a gun, a cell phone, things like that, where self-defense was appropriate and deadly force was appropriate in response because it was either supposed to look like a gun or supposed to threaten deadly force, which is exactly what an unloaded gun would do when you bring it to a fist fight like this. That's exactly what it would do. Additionally, another mistake I think she made. She agrees and admits that it was not a fair fight. 4 men came to fight and he lost that fight. That is a great starting point for the defense. I would have started with that. I would have said she admits it was not a fair fight. And the 4 guys beating up Travis and his brother was absolutely enough to respond in deadly force. And the fact that they went back to the car does not mean the threat was over, especially once he saw the 2 firearms. They were outmatched. There were 2 guns against 1. That's what I would have gone with because she admitted it. She also talks about, she goes through the other, why it was first degree and not second degree. It wasn't a heat of passion. Explain what that is. Just thought was a little interesting. And then kind of near the end, she talks about were the victims committing crimes in this case, which a lot of you have asked about. And, off the top, I answered at least 1. But also multiple crimes. And let's hear kind of how she finishes with it.
They intended for the act to carry through. For instance, we all decide that we want to commit a robbery. I'm the driver. You have the gun.
She's now talking about the principle, so we'll actually listen to this a little bit together too.
And I want to talk to you a little bit about some instructions that you're going to get that might seem a little confusing in the self-defense instruction section. And one of them has something to do called principle. Okay. So generally speaking, principle theory is about when several people are involved in carrying out a particular act and they're all guilty because they intended for the act to carry through. For instance, we all decide that we want to commit a robbery. I'm the driver, you have the gun, another person perhaps checks out the area. All of us in concert are making sure this robbery happens the way we want it to happen. It is possible for you all to be found guilty. Now it's strange, I know, because the principle theory here is about not Mr. Rudolph, because clearly he's not acting in concert with anybody else. He's by himself with a 6R rifle. It's now asking you to consider whether or not the victims in this case were committing crimes. Whether or not that's the reason Mr. Rudolph had for using force against them. And the same question that you were confronted with at the beginning, is this self-defense, will come back again. At the time that Mr. Rudolph was about to shoot and did in fact shoot, were these individuals, Keyshawn Jones, Tyler Robinson, Sebastian Jean-Jacques, and Chris Lowe, committing felonies against Mr. Rudolph? The answer is a resounding no. It is a resounding no. It is an offensive no. They were fleeing for their lives. The video proves that beyond a reasonable doubt.
So were they committing a crime? No. It is a resounding no. It is an offensive no. They were fleeing. So first off, obviously you have to completely just disregard anything Travis Rudolph said about the other firearms, about it being connected to them. Number one. Number two, completely disregard that they were continuing to beat up and batter Travis Rudolph's brother, which multiple people testified to. And then third, now again, this is not something you can respond with deadly force, but they were fleeing the scene of a crime. They showed up, committed battery, and fled. So they were at least committing that crime. Again, not that you can respond in self-defense with deadly force to that, but for the state to say it's offensive to believe that these 4 people were committing a crime in this split instance of a second is offensive. That's just too far. That's a bridge too far, as Judge Newman said. And I think this state would lose credibility with those kinds of arguments. I think they made some really good arguments, but that's where I feel like that's just tough. And Mary asked, could the girlfriend be tried for her text, shoot the ship or whatever, as in the Michelle Carver case, who was guilty of manslaughter for texting her boyfriend to get in the truck and die? Absolutely. The girlfriend, the other 4, Travis Rudolph, his brother, potentially. There are lots of crimes to go around potentially here. Which ones are winnable? Which ones have self-defense elements? Which ones are justified? That's a question. But absolutely, there's a lot of wrongdoing going around here. And Belinda kind of agrees. The girlfriend encouraging her brother to go shoot up her boyfriend is deranged. She knew there were going to be there were guns in his house and someone would get hurt. I agree. I agree. All right, let's jump to the defense's closing now. Starts out by explaining how it's an episode of The Sopranos. Someone disrespected someone's daughter and they were sent to whack him. And then the big chunk that I want to listen to is what a lot of you focused on, which was the lead detective, their investigation or lack thereof. And he goes hard at this lead detective. And we're going to talk about the strategy of doing this, whether or not it works, what the research says, but he had no qualms about it. This was the bulk of his closing, was going at this lead investigator.
Either way, it's ridiculous. This is not Sherlock Holmes. This is Barney Fife. I'm sorry if I'm using old terms from shows, maybe RFD, but this is crazy. Palm Beach County, one of the most wealthiest counties in America. A 10-minute interview. We'll ask him what happened. And that's fair? That's fair to Mr. Rudolph? Arresting him at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning? With 2 10-minute interviews and shell casings and not give a damn about what really happened? Is that fair? How did he get away with that? How? How do you not search the photo? You saw the photos. I'm going to show them to you again. You saw this. You've all been paying attention. We appreciate your sacrifice. We know it's brutal sitting there day after day listening to this. You saw the photographs. You heard the testimony. There's a food truck behind the gas station or the car shop. They don't even know if it's working or open or not. No one even bothered going back to check. Why didn't anyone check? Tons of officers from West Palm. They're at her disposal. She's the producer of this case. If this was a movie, you'd probably walk out in the middle of it or change the channel, but you can't because it's real life. This is what she's giving you. There's not one mention from the state about Vandalin. Of course not. She's an embarrassment to the shield. She shouldn't even be a cop. Ridiculous.
Okay, so he's not just going in on the lead detective. He's saying she is an embarrassment to the shield and shouldn't be a cop. Later on, he says he hopes if something good happens from this case, she gets demoted and has to go back to the academy. He lambasts her. I mean, I have never heard someone to even in Murdoch's case, they did not go this hard against the investigators and law enforcement. And there's more. We're going to listen to more. But what do you guys think about this? Because I know usually you don't like when they bash on law enforcement, but in this case, with how poor this was, and he points out a ton of things, a 10-minute interview is a joke. Not going to look for the gun unless you know it's there is a joke. It's horrible. It's totally unfair. We cannot have that happen in our country. That is how innocent people get convicted. We do not want innocent people behind bars. So what do you think? I want to know what you think about him really bashing law enforcement, because a lot of times people don't like that.
And gives you questions that you're going to have for the rest of this case. You'll never know. No one will know what really happened. It's impossible to tell. Why can't you look behind a fence? It takes 3 seconds. Why? Why can't you get a ladder and look on a roof? I have no evidence to it. I don't look for anything unless I know it's there. It's the most absurd statement I've ever heard. Been doing this a long time. A first-year cop right out of the academy would know you look for things. How do you know it's there if you don't look? She sounded like someone running for office that didn't know what she was talking about with all this, the totality of the circumstances. The investigation begins as soon as the arrest is made. What investigation was done afterwards? Nothing. You asked her everything she did afterwards. Zero. Took her a year and a half to get medical records. Why are they showing you all these photographs? Tyler Robinson's injuries. He told you he did it. There's no question he did it. They're not asking for sympathy, but they're showing you photos. Horrible photos. They could have showed you an anatomical chart, but instead the medical examiner comes in and painstakingly shows you every single wound, every single trajectory, which was right to left, by the way. None was from the back. I even asked them. I turned my back. I said, sir.
Another good point. None coming from the back, all right to left for the entry wounds.
Any shots come from the back? And he finally said, no, they're all right to left. Why are they showing you all this? But they don't take a single picture of my client, of Mr. Travis Rudolph, of his brother? What's going on here? The most absurd statement. She needs a warrant. That's ridiculous. You don't need a warrant to take a picture of another human being in public. It's absolutely false. It's a lie, along with many other lies. Can't check a database. The gun expert comes after her.
Again, it's a lie among many other lies to say this about law enforcement. Most of you say he's right. Most of you say it was warranted. I think I only saw one person say it could backfire. So judging from you all as potential jurors, if you were a jury of 2,000 people that are here, the majority of you would agree with him and think it was warranted. Now, I think it's a case-by-case basis, right? You don't want to bash law enforcement in every case, especially if they make a mistake or do one thing wrong or there's some discrepancy. Very different than what he's saying happened in this case.
Oh, detectives check the databases all the time. Everything she said was false, just about. It's ridiculous. This is not a shoplifting case. Even if it was, the person accused of shoplifting deserves a fair trial. She did absolutely nothing to give you all an ability to really know what happened. And that's not fair. It's not fair to him. It's not fair to the decedent's family. Most of all, it's not fair to you all. That's not the way we try cases in America. Thank God we have this Constitution where the police are checked. Some police do a good job. And other police officers, as you've seen in this case, I'm not blaming all the cops. Most of the cops just did what they were told.
And it's good that he made that caveat. Not all the cops. Some just did what they were told.
This lady was the captain of the show. She didn't give a damn for whatever reason. Either she wanted to convict him, get a notch on her belt because she's a new cop. Oh, I got a celebrity. I got a former NFL player. I'm not going to give the jury any evidence to show I was wrong. Come on. This isn't Russia. It's not fair. It's not fair to anyone. Most of all, it's not fair to you all because you didn't see. How would it hurt if someone went back even? Even if you buy the excuse, well, I didn't look behind the fence because I had no evidence of guns. She ignored the hand. You don't need a doctor to tell you that. That's common sense, that hand could have been holding a gun. Why do I have to bring it up? That's her job. The crime scene people told you that they saw that and they said it could have been a gun. The lead detective is either completely stupid or a complete liar, or both. Why didn't she even look at that? Why? Make a big deal over we had to hire an expert. Of course we did. Police don't work for me. I can't call up 50 cops who've been to all these homicide scenes and start telling them to do this, do that, do this, start collecting evidence. I can't get out there and start bringing down the crime scene tape and we talked about this in jury selection and start looking for evidence that this cop didn't do. That's not my job. I'd get arrested. We'll talk about who should have been arrested in this case. The wrong people are sitting at this table.
And that's another point he kind of makes throughout the trial, that the wrong people are sitting at the table and the wrong people were arrested. And, you know, that's something that I think a lot of you in the chat were asking. Why weren't they arrested? Why weren't they part of the, defendants in the case? How are they the victims? He also mentions how nasty the witnesses were and they don't remember now. They do remember then. And then he goes in on Tyler and the multiple times he perjured himself, which again, this guy threw a lot of the research says, don't go after law enforcement this hard and don't go after victims this hard, which this is a different set of victims, but wait till he gets to the girlfriend. We'll talk about that. But first, let's hear him talk about Tyler a little bit.
Somebody when they're under anesthesia or medication that they don't know what they're talking about? Of course not. He doesn't even tell the next officer there was a gun. And his two friends lied. That 10-minute interview, which is absurd. Never went back again because she didn't want anything to hurt her case. Now the truth's starting to come out. Y'all saw it a little bit. A glimpse of what she did or didn't do. The 10-minute interview, neither one of us had guns. Nobody in our car had guns. That's what they said. Is that true? Is that the evidence in this case? And you heard from Tyler Robinson, who's actually a multi-time perjurer who's never been charged for saying, I didn't remember in a hearing under oath in front of this court. And they give him a free ride for that too. A free ride for lying over and over and over just so they can protect Detective Vandalin and win this case. Is that fair? You come into court and lie over and over and over and over and over and I don't remember. come to a deposition and say, I don't really remember, because Vanderlyn tells you, she tells Tyler that she had video, and he thought there was video, so he was afraid to say what happened. A couple months after this happened, he still was under the belief that the video was working. Vanderlyn told him, he said. And in June, when he gave his deposition, he couldn't really remember what happened at the door. And then he comes in here today. A couple of days ago, he remembers everything. He had to be arrested to get here last time in November. That's putting pressure on a witness to get him to say what you want him to say, to join our team. That's the power they have. It's scary. You saw the blue line here. You saw most of these cops sticking together. Ms. Perlette shows the one cop from West Palm Beach, the picture of the pockets.
So basically he says Tyler didn't know all this, had to be arrested to show up. Then he shows up with new information. He impeached him with his deposition, all this stuff just to make him look like a horrible witness. And credibility of witnesses is huge. And that's why if you have victims that are not incredibly credible, that makes the case very difficult, which is exactly the kind of witnesses that he has. And, you know, I thought he did a good job just knocking the credibility of Tyler as a witness out. All right, now let's jump to some self-defense talk here.
Reasonable doubt that the defendant was not justified in using or threatening to use deadly force, just like we talked in jury selection. It really boils down to this. That's why I wasted so much time. But it really wasn't a waste, as you can see now.
I do not know any of the attorneys involved in this case.
Because this is the heart of the question. There's no way any reasonable person at this point could say, with this evidence, beyond all reasonable doubt, he was definitely not using self-defense. There's no way anybody can say that in this case. Why? Because you don't have all the evidence. You have nothing other than a couple of videos which show what they show. And you hear the gunshots. It's never been in dispute, ever. It's not in dispute.
Yes, Peter, it does. Thank you.
But you can't see who's holding a gun and who's not holding a gun. You don't even know if Tyler Robinson was in the car. You heard the bullets ricocheted all around the car. Little pellets come out, and according to the medical examiner, they break up. You don't even know what was in his body. They didn't even show that to you. You don't know where he got shot. There's no blood in the back seat. How's that possible if he's laying on his friend, which is the first time he ever made that statement, as you heard in this courtroom?
So that was just an interesting point there at the end. There was no blood in the back seat. So where was Tyler shot? How was he shot? This is the first time we ever heard he was laying over his friend as a hero, like the prosecutor said. Again, trying to make these victims heroes is difficult. But to me, I really think that he did a good job of pointing out that they really didn't prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt because of the bad investigation. And it's, you know, kind of similar to the Murdoch thing that failed. So we will see what the jury ends up thinking. But then he takes a chance here. And I don't know how you guys are going to feel about this. I had a feeling I knew how you were going to feel about about law enforcement. But I want to know what you think about him taking these kinds of shots at a female in a relationship, you know, who was being cheated on. He went hard on her as well. And I want to know what you guys think about it.
Certainly that's important. This girl was looking for a payday. I'm a realtor. Ms. Perlette, have you sold anything? Is what she asked. I rented one apartment. COVID, I had nothing. I pay for everything. I'm a self-supporting woman. Then when she got pressed, but my mom is a medical assistant. That's a self-supporting woman? This is a woman who's a gold digger, who's hoping Travis gets back in the NFL. She took advantage of him. He was too dumb to see it. Like most men. Not thinking with his right head. I hate to say that, but that's the truth. She's a gold digger. Plastic surgery. You already got a boyfriend. You need plastic surgery? I'm mad. The last 30 days, I haven't seen him. I'm getting angry. I don't trust him. He's in Miami. Trying to get back into he had a contract to play in the CFL, the Canadian Football League, the following month after this happened.
So he calls her a gold digger. He talks about her appearance, about how if she, why'd she get plastic surgery if she has a boyfriend? Yes, the married girlfriend, that's going to come up later. Okay. A lot of you are saying he's right. Okay. All right. You guys are the potential jurors, not me. some questions here before we finish. Tori, Peter, what are your true and real thoughts about TR and the girlfriend? I mean, like a million relationships every single day have people cheating on them. Do I think it's right? No. Morally, ethically, everything about it I think is wrong. I think it's horrible. I think nobody should do that to each other. Um, I I think that's horrible. But no way in any civilized society should you be able to respond with violence or with, bringing people in to shoot him up, even to threaten him, nothing like that. There's no place in this world for that because of disagreements, because people don't want to be together anymore. We've made it way too easy in society to cheat on each other and break up and do whatever makes you feel good, kind of thing, that, there's nothing illegal about it. Even if it's morally and ethically wrong, you cannot respond with violence. I think it was not a good relationship. It seemed toxic, seemed like everybody around them knew it. But again, responding with this is horrible and should be criminal. I mean, what she did should be criminal regardless of the outcome of the altercation. Mrs. Escobar, hey, Peter and Lawyer, fam, love the shirt. Hope your conference is going well. It is. This is one of my favorite hotels ever. MJC, do they have felony M in Florida? Yes, we do. Diamonds, lots of objections at closing were sustained. Aren't you allowed to say anything in closing, especially when prosecutors get the last word? No. You usually can't call people dummies. You usually can't use disrespectful language. Like if he was going to say that the cop is totally stupid or whatever, and they object, they'll sustain that. He just kept going. There wasn't a lot of argument. Usually when lawyers keep going, they know that they were wrong. They know that they lost that objection. They know they shouldn't have used that verbiage or language, and they just keep moving on. That's what a lot of these objections were. Tori, what were all the charges? Is it only first degree, sending a human to heaven? Is there more? That shirt is fire. Thank you, Tori. There was also attempted M on the other three that were in the car. Dominique is a married. Yeah, there's more on that later. We'll get to that. Becky Z, multiple times the Rudolphs were accused of not coming forward with their side. As a lawyer, Peter, is it the job of the witnesses, the detective, to come forward with their side of the story testimony? Absolutely not. Especially when you feel like your son or your brother has gotten jobbed by the police. You're not going to trust police. You're going to trust your lawyer. That's what you should do. I think it's totally unfair for them to even make those arguments. I would have tried to file a motion in limine and keep that out as a totally inappropriate argument. I think that that's horrible to do. To just be like, oh, everybody should just trust the police. They never do anything wrong. Everybody, whether you're accused of the crime, whether your mom is, your dad is, your son is, you should just talk to the police, tell them everything, hand everything over to them. They never mess up things. They never dock their evidence. They never change anything to make sure they get their guy or gal. Like, no, it's just not how it works, unfortunately, in our society. And they have to be held accountable as well. And I think that's important. All right. Interesting point. He says that the victims didn't even wave the cops down when they came to the scene to say that their friend was, injured or shot. Then he also, again, talks about hopefully something good comes out of this because it's kind of a tragic day. Maybe they'll do a better investigation next time. I like all that, although I also think that you can object to that as an improper argument that the jury, by handing down a not guilty verdict, is going to change the way police do business, kind of like in the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp. You can't make these societal changes based on one jury verdict, but there was no objection there. And then he discusses the principal theory at the end. So let's listen to that. Or near the end, I should say. And this is the principal theory about the victims being criminals.
Couldn't control himself. State's wrong. Said that only person said that Mr. Robinson pulled a gun out was my client. That's not true. Dower Rudolph told you he pulled a gun out on him also on the side of the house. He's a dangerous man. These are all dangerous men. Principal theory is if they were committing crimes, they're all equally guilty. They're not on trial here. But why it's important is for you all to understand the principal theory. It's basically like the Three Musketeers. Here we got the four. One for all and all for one. And if one guy, like the prosecutor told you, is the getaway driver, and the other guy goes into the 7-Eleven to rob the store and he kills the store owner, they're both guilty of murder. Same thing in this case, the reverse. If these four guys came there to do what they were going to do, and you all know probably what they were going to do, most likely, definitely, despite what they have told you, then they're all equally guilty. And then if they're guilty of ag assault, any felony, Agasaw pointing a gun. Any one of them. Not two, not three or four, just one of them. They're all equally guilty of doing that. And then Mr. Rudolph had a right to shoot all of them. Because they're all together in this. They caused this. Blaming my client for coming out without his shirt? That was an insinuation the government had. He was sleeping. It's his house.
Again, bad argument by the government. We kind of already talked about that. That was just a bad argument, in my opinion. Like that he had his shirt off and therefore he must be the aggressor as an aggressive person with his shirt off. Like, get out of here. So yeah, so I think he made a good argument there that one of them's guilty. They're all guilty. And that's also why Rudolph's brother's testimony that they also pulled a gun on him is really important as well. What poll? Chaos is asking for a poll. I guess, John, we can go ahead and do a poll of where people stand. Was this self-defense, yes or no? And we can post that poll now as we get into the state's rebuttal, which was fiery. It was coming straight at the defense. And here's where we get to the jury question, where they actually asked if they could come back and watch all of the ring camera video and body cam footage. He started his rebuttal by saying, if you aren't sure about anything, you can ask us to come back and watch these videos. And he argues you can see the brother in the white shirt, Travis Rudolph's brother, in the video as the shots were being fired, not where everybody said that he was, not still in danger, and Travis Rudolph continues to fire shots. That may have been the single best point made by the state in either their first or second close. That to me was a good point. If in fact that's what it shows, I can't tell that by the video, but the jury wanted to come back and watch this video again. And maybe that's what they were looking for. We won't know, but very interesting. He also makes the argument, so the gun was 10 inches away from your head, the brother said, then why would you chase him? It's like, dude, and the brother even agreed, like, that was a bad decision. It's like, people do stupid stuff in the middle of a fight. Like starting a fight or engaging in a fight is stupid. So it wouldn't be that unreasonable that the fight continued even after, one side sucker punches you and runs. Sometimes people will chase after him, even if it's a wrong decision. Two worlds were presented, one by all the state witnesses and one by the Rudolphs. One world makes sense. The Rudolphs does not. Disagreed with that. They never told the cops this or that. We kind of talked about that already. Not necessarily the victim, as they felt that they were the victims, or even the defendant's job to do the investigation for the cops, especially when the cops don't even do an investigation and search for things that are around unless they know they're there. They weren't there to shoot stuff up. And he said, this is what he said, which again is dealing with bad victims. Okay. There could be a CLE course on dealing with bad clients, dealing with bad victims, dealing with bad situations. But he said, come on, they were just there to talk, or maybe they wanted to start a fight if Travis wanted one. Unless things changed from when I was a kid, you didn't really care if the other person wanted to start the fight. If you wanted to start it and you want to go beat somebody up for something they did, you go do it. You don't ask them, hey, is it okay if we have a fight outside? The car could have been a deadly weapon, Joy, but there was no testimony that the car was coming towards them or they were in fear for their safety because of the car. I say the same thing. I think this is the first time I disagree with you, Peter. Say the same thing. What? I don't know when you said this, when I said what. Tori, I got here late. Is the jury having trouble coming up with a verdict? No, it's only been, I think, about 2 hours. Okay. And then I knew this was coming and we talked about it during Travis Rudolph's testimony. And I thought it was fair game at this point for him to kind of come after Travis Rudolph for this. You guys let me know, just like we did with the detective, just like we did with Travis Rudolph's ex-girlfriend, was this fair game and how he comes at Travis Rudolph and how he treated Dominique.
Travis is the victim. Cheats on his girlfriend, undisputed, when he gets in front of all the victim. Cheats on his girlfriend, undisputed, when he gets in front of all of you. Tries to say, oh, well, it wasn't really that serious. Oh,
well, here's my question just to start. Sorry, I've already interjected, but Travis is the victim, cheats on his girlfriend. It's like, so anybody who cheats on their girlfriend or boyfriend can't be a victim? Is that what he's saying? Come on.
Well, I didn't make her my official girlfriend. All this, all that. Despite she sleeps over all the time. And in previous hearings, that's exactly what it was. And he admits that he was not faithful with her. So what happens? She finds out. She gets upset. That ring any alarm bells or anything? Yes. Anybody would tend to get upset if they find out the person that they've been dating for a year has been cheating on them. Makes sense why she gets upset. She says very nasty things to him. What does he do in response to that? When he's in the wrong now, ladies and gentlemen, he is. What does he do? Starts making fun of her body. Saying, hey, the other girl that I've been cheating with, she got a way better body than you. That seem like he's not a victim? That seem like he's instigating? Does that seem like he's escalating with the girlfriend? Yeah.
See, I don't like that. I don't like that argument. I don't like the way, does that seem like, it's just like a little too much sarcasm. And it's like, is that wrong of Travis Rudolph? Absolutely. I said it when he was on the stand. That's bad. But this is purely just arguing character assassination, that he is a bad guy, that he is, somebody who cheats on his girlfriend, who talks about her body. And I just think that has nothing to do with whether or not this was self-defense. And yes, he is about to say that she was married. And we'll get to that.
Yes. Can we understand why Dominique gets a little bit more angry after that? Again, yes. And then what happens? He calls her a bitch. Said, hey, come get this crazy bitch. And then she gets upset again. Is there ever a moment where he's not the cause of her anger? No.
So what is he saying? So what she did was justified. That's, I think, the problem. I agree. All of that stuff is horrible. You should never say that to any person, man or woman. It's rude. It's horrible things to say. You should not say it. But are we saying as a prosecutor, it's okay to then tell your brother and his friends to come shoot him up or F him up or whatever it is, or even start a fight, even beat him up? Is that okay?
Defense keeps wanting to talk about, oh, she was married. She was married. Any evidence she was still seeing that guy? Any?
Again, the stuff that you have to respond to sometimes as lawyers with a straight face is like, oh, the defense keeps wanting to say she was married. We don't even know if she still talks to her husband. It's like, dude, the point was, this was hardly a normal, exclusive, married, or even incredibly serious relationship, okay? Travis Rudolph was seeing other women. He wasn't very nice to her sometimes. She was still legally married. What the heck? Who knows what's going on with that? The point the defense, I think, is trying to make is this was not some perfect relationship that Travis Rudolph ruined by talking to some other woman. That's what they were saying. Everybody's wrong all the way around, which is why we don't send people with guns to people we're in fights with houses and in relational fights with. That's, I think, the point.
No. She got up there and told you, we're legally separated. I didn't really want to tell him that. Can we understand that? That a girlfriend in a relationship for about a year doesn't really want to talk about this thing that's about to end anyway and has no relevance in their relationship.
So I mean, and this is just getting stupid. I'm getting too snarky here. I need to move on because I would respond to this sarcasm with more sarcasm of my own. You mean kind of, so she just, I mean, is it that big of a deal that this girl doesn't want to tell her new boyfriend that she also has this thing over here that's about to end? My response would be, then is it also so weird that Travis Rudolph, who has this girlfriend, doesn't want to tell her about this new thing that might be starting, but hasn't really started yet with this new girl? It's like, no, dude, that's the point. All of this is wrong. They have drama. They're two people that probably shouldn't be in a relationship together and they're not treating each other appropriately, but that is not how you respond. We do not want all of this to come out and turn into a literal shoot 'em up in a neighborhood. Think about all the other people that could have been injured. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's just not an argument a lawyer should make, in my opinion. And then he finishes with, well, Tyler and the other victims, they admit that maybe in hindsight, it wasn't the best idea to go over to Travis Rudolph's house that night and do what they planned on doing. Duh. The understatement of the century. If they don't go there that night, this never happens. And that will be the hard thing to get around if you're a juror. This literally never happens. If Dominique just leaves or whatever, But if they show up to the house, that's where everything starts. Now, did they flee is a legal question and a fact question for this jury to determine. Sonia, girlfriend claimed 84 shots, yet it was 39. No one corrected. I don't remember that. Southern Mama, hi, can she be charged with something? I mean, she could, but it sounds like the state is not going to do that, which, having the girlfriend come in as a victim charged with a crime is not usually good for your case. So they decided to go after what they felt was the biggest fish. Class Act Beauty, hey, you love my lawyer, t-shirt my hubby got me for Mother's Day. Thank you. I'm glad you liked it. That was awesome. I was excited. Also, I have watched this whole trial and I have so many mixed feelings. I do understand the mixed feelings part, but I feel like, and let's see if John has sent me the poll results. No results yet. I do feel like the state is having trouble proving this case beyond a reasonable doubt. I feel like this is a self-defense case. That's probably the way I would lean. I don't know where the chat is leaning, but I'm very interested to hear. All right. So while that is all we have for the closing argument breakdown, I want to remind you, when the jury verdict comes out, I'll answer some more questions before we go. When the verdict comes down in this case, we'll do a video on that. We're going to do some opening statement stuff on the Scott Peterson case. So was this self-defense? 89% say yes. I believe that's up about 5% from when we did it earlier, a couple days ago, when we did our first video. So now even more people after closing arguments feel this is a self-defense case. So we got Scott Peterson stuff coming up and then that Johnny Depp video on Friday. So truth seeker is struggling to answer the poll. Just that's fine. If you're undecided, that's fine. All right. So I'm going to get to just maybe one or two more questions and then we will take off. Don't forget to hit that like button on this video if you haven't already. Joanne. So I just started my classes to be a paralegal. I wouldn't have it. Sorry. I wouldn't have if it wasn't for finding this channel. The state and police just did a horrible job. They lost me a long time ago. #innocent. Well, Joanne, I wish you the best of luck. If you ever need anything or have any questions or need any recommendations, I'd be more than happy to help. Good luck on your paralegal endeavor. Why were they not charged with conspiracy? The only thing I can think about is they needed them to be cleaner victims for this case to convict Travis Rudolph. Inciting or conspiring to commit M is not something she can be charged with. I think she can. Assault. We have a ring camera video of her punching him in the face. Everybody seems to admit she hit him with a Patron bottle or a trophy or whatever. There's lots of crimes I think she could have been charged with. Ooh, great. If you are struggling, not guilty. These people listen. You jurors listen. And I think the state did not prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. All right. Again, I want to say thank you to you all one more time. The conference continues. More videos are coming. Belinda on the way out. Hope he's found not guilty and she gets charged with incitement. That could happen. But I am out of here. Back to the conference. Lunch break over. Until next time, thanks everybody for joining me. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok at Tragos Law is our handle. And don't forget to listen to the Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. If you have a know you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.